coffee shop. He was there, he said, every day for 3 weeks, and he had this little notebook that he would write into. And he had his typewriter there too. And so what he did was he would sit in there and he would read the book and he would basically dissect it and decide what he wanted to put inside the film. And what they did was in the book, it actually talks about Vito Corleone's time in Sicily as a child and growing up and when he came to America. But because of what do you call it? Why? Budget. That's what it is. My God. Because of the budget, what they did was Francis Ford Coppola cut it out because he was afraid that Paramount Pictures was going to get angry at him for using that large budget. But luckily, he actually saved that and decided later on when he was going to do part 2, because during filming of part 1, during filming of part 1, and it was before it was even done filming, there was such a huge buzz about this movie because they were finally getting the gangster classics back. And so what they did was they were like, you know what? While we're still filming this one, let's go ahead and start working on the second one so we can get that one done and out as fast as we can, because the second one's probably going to be just as big as another hit. So Paramount actually got a larger budget because they actually made more money at the time. They were they were basically in debt, and they needed a big hit to bring them out of it. So I'm getting text messages from my parents about things that I've already said, so I'm wondering if I was actually already on air and it just cut off. I'm not really sure what happened. But I'll talk another hour again about The Godfather, because why not? This time I actually know a few more things. So the first Godfather focuses more on Don Corleone and the family after Vito Corleone, the Don, becomes the Don. Later, his youngest son, Michael, played by Al Pacino, becomes the Don, and we actually get to see that transition. Coppola also, what he would do is in the coffee shop, there were a lot of Italian Americans over there, and so he would observe how they would talk. Even he is Italian American as well. But what he would do is he was observed a lot of other, Italian Americans, how they acted and behaved, and he put that into the script to give it a real genuine feel of this is how Italian Americans really are. Even though it was probably a bad thing, because a lot of Italian Americans actually say that at the time of the filming, they were saying that it was giving them a bad name, that it was making all Italian Americans look like they were in the mafia and gangsters. So since 1972, since The Godfather's release, it's actually been spoofed and quoted so many times. So in part 1, originally Al Pacino wasn't for the role, but when they got him, he wasn't very well liked by crew. They would kind of make fun of him, and they were pretty rude to him. One of them, I remember, they said they used to call him that midget Pacino. So that was always really good. So that was kind of hard on him, but really what the movie did was it skyrocketed him up into stardom. And after that, he was actually in Serpico in 1973. So honestly, The Godfather got him where he is today. So the movie actually took 62 days to film. That's what Francis Ford Coppola has said. I saw somewhere where it said 90 days, but I'm pretty sure Francis Ford Coppola knows how many days it actually took to film. So in the beginning, Johnny Fontaine was played by Al Martino. And I'm trying to think of any Al Martino songs that you guys might know, but it's kind of hard. He's a famous Italian singer as well. So he's in the office talking to Don Corleone about this movie that he wanted to star in, but he wasn't able to. He was getting blocked from doing it. So he's crying about it. He's getting so upset, and Marlon Brando, who plays Don Corleone, smacks him. And Sonny, who's played by James Caan, who was also in the room, said that he wasn't supposed to get smacked. And so when he did, that Martino he was taken back. He's like, I don't know whether to laugh or cry, which, I mean, that's me like 24/7. And during the wedding, too, you see they have a lot of FBI agents out there taking pictures because there were supposedly a lot of gangsters at the wedding because they're going there to see the Godfather to get a favor from him, which is another big quote. You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding and ask me for a favor, and you don't even have the heart to call me your friend. So when he's out there, Sonny goes out to the FBI agents and he takes their cameras and smashes it, which was actually improvised. So it gave that genuine frightened feel from the actors. And the schedule was kind of rushed. So in the beginning, when Michael and Kay first get there, the scene, I mean, I watch it now because I was watching it when I was actually writing this segment together, is the scene with Michael and Kay was actually shot at night. And that's the amazing thing about lighting is as long as you know what you're doing, it actually, so I was cut off. I just got a text about it. So I was cut off for a while. So I was in here talking to myself about The Godfather for nothing, but that's fine because I do that in my own room all the time. So what had happened was, the cinematographer Gordon Willis, who is a phenomenal cinematographer, he's also famous for doing the top lighting in the scene where they're inside of his office. And what was great about the top lighting for that is that it covered Marlon Brando's eyes, so you couldn't see it, because I actually learned this thanks to my filmmaking teacher, Professor Frost. She told us that it was actually because when you see somebody's eyes, you can see what they're thinking. And so when you can't see Marlon Brando's eyes, as a Don, you can't understand what he's thinking because he's a psychopath. So you have no idea what he's about to do. You don't know what his next move is. You don't know, if he's got sympathy or anything like that. So what he did was he set up so many lights to make it seem as if the, I don't know, my mom's texting me random things. Anyway, so I don't even know what's going on. So I'm just going to keep going. So we're going to keep going for 2 hours about The Godfather. So in this time, you could have been watching The Godfather and actually be pretty much done with it by the time this segment's over, the first one. So what he did was, what's insane to me too, is that you watch it and you don't even realize that it was shot at night. That's crazy to me. So Coppola wanted to get the shot done in the same day, but it got so late and the schedule was rushed that they couldn't do it until obviously later that night. So when they get it done, when they're setting up, Gordon Willis was actually very frustrated that he had to set all of the lights up. But that, that's actually a really good scene to show if you're ever going to be in lighting, is that Gordon Willis, how he used the lighting, how he used, depending on if it was 5600 Kelvin or 3200 Kelvin. It's insane to see that that lighting is very, very important when it comes to movies, especially if you don't want to, waste another day on filming this scene. You can just use lighting. It's insane. So another big scene in The Godfather Part 1 is the horse head. That's been mimicked millions of times. What they did was, it was an actual horse head. They had gone to a pet food factory, and they said, "Hey, is it cool if we take one of the horse heads?" And they were like, "Yeah, go ahead and take it." So they took it, and there were actually a lot of animal rights activists that were pretty upset about it. But Coppola actually told Variety magazine that there's a lot of people that were killed in the movie, but everybody was worried about the horse head. And he said it was the same on set. So when the head arrived, it upset a lot of crew members who are animal lovers who like dogs. What they don't know is that we got the head from pet food manufacturers who would kill about 200 horses a day just to feed those dogs. So, I mean, what are you going to do? Another one is, so Paramount, so I think I talked about it earlier. I can't remember what I've even talked about now. Paramount was facing financial trouble at the time, so them having Francis Ford Coppola sign on to this movie, they knew it was going to be a hit, which was great because it brought them out of financial debt. It was an instant hit, which actually brought them to the sequel which was another huge hit. Godfather Part 2 is probably more famous than Godfather Part 1, to be honest. Granted, Godfather Part 1 gave us Godfather Part 2 and all these other ones like Goodfellas and Bronx Tale, and, it brought that genre back. But Godfather Part 2 is more famous because of the way that it was shot and the actors, how they really brought the movie to life. So when there were a lot of jokes that went on during the movie, Marlon Brando was really big into pranks. I think that's well known on almost every single movie that he's done. What he did was, I can't remember, people have said it's weights, people have said it's bricks. Either way, he put something heavy. So after he had the assassination attempt, when they were taking him back home, they had to lift him up the stairs to put him back into his room. So what he did was, before the scene started, was he put bricks or weights, whatever they are, into his bed. So when they tried to lift him up to go up the stairs, they couldn't do it. And he's sitting there in his bed just laughing. And they can't figure out why. Oh, why'd I do that? So during the wedding scene, too, they had, I think they said like 400 people at the wedding scene. And he just told, Francis Ford Coppola just told everybody there, they're like, you know what, just act like it's a wedding. Just do whatever you guys want to do. I really don't care. Make it seem fun. Make it seem like you guys are having a really good time. Another one, too, is, so you see, too, in the film, I can't remember if it gets mentioned or not, but Michael was, he was in the Army. No, it was the Marine Corps. I'm sorry. He was in the Marine Corps. His captain stomped on his face, which caused him to have this really big bruising, and they actually used a lot of makeup and, I'm trying to think of latex, basically, to put on him to show that, to make it look like he actually had, been stomped on. They did the coloring and everything. And what Al Pacino did was he actually got his jaw wired shut for the scenes, which is, it's insane because it's pretty method acting like. I mean, a lot of them did a lot of method act, like Brando did too. He'd stuff the cotton wool in his mouth. That's one of the most famous ones, is when he went to audition for it. He wanted Don Corleone to look more like a bulldog. So he stuffed his cheeks with cotton wool to do that. And so when the actual filming began and he was cast as Don Corleone, they decided, you don't have to keep stuffing your mouth with cotton wool. We'll just have a dentist make you an implant. That way you can just have it that way, and it's a little easier for you to take in and out, and you don't have to keep changing it in between takes. And actually that piece that he made for him is in the American Museum of the Moving Image in Queens, New York. So I'll probably take a trip up there sometime and see that, because that actually sounds like a pretty good museum. And then you have Francis Ford Coppola. His family was actually in the movie a lot. His mom, his dad, and his cousin, most notably, who is Talia Shire. It's either Talia or Talia. I've heard it both ways. I'm not really sure which one it is. But she played Connie, and she also played Adrian in Rocky. And they were actually, Francis Ford Coppola was actually pretty reluctant to put his cousin in there because he was afraid that she was too pretty and didn't want it to have nepotism to the film. But Mario Puzo actually suggested that she try out for the role, which she actually did. So another one too is, this is a big one too. This has been referenced in a lot of TV shows and movies, most notably The Sopranos, and I'll get to that after I say it. So whenever there would be oranges in a scene, it would usually symbolize near death or death. So the first one was when Don Corleone is down at the market and he's getting oranges, and Fredo's there just being Fredo, not very smart, just kind of spacing off. And he's walking back to his car, and he's got his bag full of oranges, and this car comes up and starts opening fire on Don Corleone, and he then drops the oranges. That scene was actually recreated in The Sopranos when Tony Soprano had a hit out on him that was made by his own mother. He was walking down the street. It actually might have been the same street. He was walking back to his car, and he had a glass of orange juice, and he turns and he gets shot at, and the bullet goes and breaks the glass of orange juice that he had. The second one in The Godfather with the oranges is the very last time that we actually see Marlon Brando in Godfather. He was in his garden with his grandson Anthony, who is Michael's son, and he took an orange peel and carved it to make it look like teeth, and he stuck it in his mouth and, turned to play with his grandson, but Anthony was scared, and so he's backing away like any 3-year-old would when he sees somebody with sharp teeth that were an orange peel, very scary to a 3-year-old. And so Don Corleone comforts him. He's like, no, it's okay. And he's like, here, take the plant water, the water, what do you call them? I forget what it's called. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Blonde. It was a bottle of orange juice. Same. But anyway, it was, he's going around in the garden and the plants that they had, and he is running around and he starts coughing and he knocks the plants over that they had. And he actually falls down and ends up passing away. So that was another one, was because of the orange peel. The cat too. I've read about this one. I've known about this one for a while. I might have mixed them up, or it was written wrong. They had found a cat out on the studio. The first version that I heard was that Marlon Brando found the cat and he picked it up and he was just messing with it on set, and they just let him do it because they were just like, you know what? Nah, it'll be all right. It's actually pretty good. This is a pretty good improvised scene. And so, but then I read that it was actually Francis Ford Coppola found the cat in the studio lot, which, I mean, it was about the same where they found him, on the studio lot. So Francis Ford Coppola brought it in and Marlon Brando was playing with it. Hold on. These chairs aren't very comfortable to sit in, sorry. So Marlon Brando was actually sitting there playing with the cat, but the problem was that the cat was so content and it was so excited to actually be played with that it was purring super loud, and what it did was it ended up muffling Vito Corleone's lines, so they actually had to loop his lines later on. And another one is, I already said that one. So we'll go on to part 2. So with part 2, if you ever have cable, it's usually on AMC. They usually show it during holidays. I tried to look it up on AMC's website to see if they had it, but I couldn't find it. But that was only because I went on the first page and just kind of gave up. But usually if you have cable, or if your parents have cable and you go home for the weekend or, the holidays, they'll actually have it on there. And what it is it's the first 2 Godfathers. And they take part 2, which was mix and match between Vito Corleone as younger and then Michael Corleone continuing on with the Corleone family, making it stronger. So what they did was they made it into chronological order. So instead of it going back from Vito to Michael, kind of like the 1990 version of It, where it's the kids, the adults, is they brought it to where the beginning is Vito Corleone as a kid, immigrating to the United States, becoming an adult, how he got into the mob. And then after that, it picks up right at the wedding scene, the very first scene in Godfather Part 1, and then goes on from there. And then after that, they play Godfather Part 2, which they said was, in all 3 Godfathers, they always opened up with a ceremony. In the first one, it was the wedding. In the second one, it was, what did they say it was? It was his commencement. It was Anthony's commencement. Something, I forget what it is. I'll probably get corrected on it here in a few minutes from one of my buddies. But and then the third one was Michael Corleone getting recognized by the Pope. So with the second one, it picks up in that chronological order that they do. I forget what they call it. They pick up right at the commencement and then go on from there. And they actually cut out a couple of scenes from Godfather Part 2, but they later put it into Godfather Part 3, which didn't come out until about 1990. So it was about 2 years until they had another Godfather, which they should have just not even done. Not Part 2, Part 3. But what's insane too is Robert De Niro is such an incredible actor. And what he did was, when he got the role of Don Vito Corleone, Vito Corleone is from Corleone, Sicily. So what Robert De Niro did was he learned how to speak the Sicilian dialect for Vito Corleone's character. And I think he said it took him about 4 months to do that. And then he actually lived in Sicily for 3 years. Not 3 years. That's excessive. 3 months. So what Vito Corleone's first started out was he worked at the Genco olive oil company. And they had the door that led into it. It was rigged up so that it wouldn't open if you put a nail into the lock. And so Coppola didn't tell Leopoldo Trieste. Don't know if I'm saying that right. Again, I'm Irish. I can't pronounce things, Italian names. Leopoldo played Signor Roberto. So when he struggled to actually get the door open in the scene, it was real. For this film, the only portion that was in the book is what I was talking about earlier, was Vito's his youth and his young adulthood. And Michael and the rest of the family in Las Vegas was actually completely made up for the film. So that's what they kept going, because they're like, we can't just focus completely on Vito Corleone and his youth and adulthood, because that was 46 minutes of the film, they said, consecutively, because Robert De Niro had 46 minutes screen time for part 2. So it would have been more of a short film, and they didn't want a short film. They wanted to continue it on to let us see what Michael Corleone had actually done. And amazingly enough, I actually found this out today. Danny Aiello was actually in the film, and he is in the film. It was 29th Street. That's actually a really good Christmas film, honestly. It's very underrated. It has the mom is the same actress who played the mom in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It took me forever to figure out who it was. But Danny Aiello was actually in Godfather Part 2. And I didn't know that he was actually in the film, but his one line, the line that he says when he comes up behind Frankie is when he gets him with a garrote, and he says, Michael Corleone says, hello. And that was actually ad-libbed. And later on in an interview, Aiello said that he didn't even know, he didn't even hear himself say that when it happened. And he still doesn't even know why he said it. And Francis Ford Coppola at the time, he was like, I don't even care, just keep it in there, because that was actually really good. De Niro also, he wasn't really sure if he was going to grow a mustache for his younger days when he played Vito Corleone as a young adult. So he actually flipped a coin on it. And another one was he actually gained some weight and even wore a smaller version of the dental appliance that Marlon Brando wore. I'm not sure if that one's in the museum, that the same one is. I'm actually kind of curious about that now. I actually kind of want to look it up and find out where that one is. So the filming was for part 2. It was 104 days compared to 62 days on the first one. And the reason why it was a lot longer, it would have been, probably 10, 20 days longer than the first one, but they had to delay it because Al Pacino actually caught pneumonia on one of the filming sites, so they had to delay it a month. And Frank Cervero, I can never say his name right. I can never pronounce it. I can never spell it. But he's most notably known in Goodfellas as Frankie the Wop. He's the one who they found in the meat freezer. He was also actually in The Wedding Singer as Adam Sandler's brother-in-law. So the scene ideas that I talked about earlier that were going to be put in part 2, in part 3 was, so if you haven't seen part 2, that's too bad, because I'm going to spoil it a little bit for you. Fredo Corleone tries to kill Michael Corleone, and Michael finds out that it was Fredo. So what he does is, Fredo goes out to go fishing, and Michael actually sanctions the hit right there. So I think that's actually the end scene, is Fredo Corleone is in the boat at their lake house, and he gets shot and he falls down. And so they were actually going to have in there a later version of Michael as an older man talking with Anthony, his son, who's supposed to be 18. And at the time, Connie mentions that Fredo actually drowned in the lake. He wasn't shot to try and keep it down that there is no mafia. So she was trying to defend Michael by saying he wasn't shot. He just drowned because Fredo was not the brightest of the three brothers. And that was actually mentioned in part 2 when Fredo goes on his rant. I'm smart. I'm not dumb like everybody else says. So with part 3, that one is honestly a roller coaster of a movie. I don't like it. For someone who makes a lot of jokes about it, it makes me very uncomfortable. It's a lot of cousin loving because it's Mary Corleone, who is Mary Corleone, who is Michael Corleone's daughter, and Vincent, who is in the first Godfather, Sonny and Lucy. We don't really know Lucy's name until I read this. I didn't even know she had a name. But she was one of the bridesmaids at the wedding that they snuck off and had an affair with. And he actually ends up having an illegitimate child, which is Vincent. So Vincent comes up and he reconnects with his family. And in the beginning of Godfather Part 3, when you're in Vincent's apartment, when he actually has intruders come in, you can see over his shoulder when he's attacking the intruders that he actually has a picture of Sonny Corleone on his shelf. So part 3 was mostly about Michael Corleone as an older man, not so involved with the mafia, but it was Vincent coming in who basically wanted to take the family over. And they had Joey Sassa, who kind of reminds me of the Don that Vito Corleone was trying to take down, and actually does eventually get taken down almost the exact same way, except for Joey Sassa gets assassinated in the street, and whatever the Don's name in part 2 was. I should know the Don's name. I've seen the movie millions of times. But he gets assassinated in his apartment. And the thing too I forgot to mention in part 2 was Robert De Niro actually suggested wrapping I think it was a towel or a sheet around the gun. It was essentially a silencer to muffle the bang so that nobody would really know that he just got assassinated, so that his bodyguards wouldn't come up and try to kill Vito. So with the third one, when they went up to Al Pacino and they were like, "Hey, we're going to do a third one. We want you to be in it." And he's like, "I want $7 million for it." And they went, "No, you're going to get $5 million." And he's like, "No, I want $7 million." So Coppola stands in and he goes, "Well, here's the thing. If you don't take the $5 million deal, what we're going to start out the movie with is we're going to start it out with Michael Corleone's funeral. And then that's just it for the rest of the film. You can maybe make $1 million off of that. So it's either you take the $5 million or you take the $1 million. What's it going to be?" And Al Pacino decided, all right, I'll take the $5 million. It's only $2 million less. Robert Duvall, who played Tom Hagen, was in the first and second parts. But he wasn't in the third because he actually declined. He was offered a $1 million deal. But what's crazy is that he was actually going to be the second main character in the series, what I read. So he would have been making, I think he was actually going to make the same amount of money. And he goes, why would I be a second main character and still make $1 million while Al Pacino is making $5 million? And that's a simple question because it's Al Pacino, man. Like, Robert Duvall is an amazing actor. Don't get me wrong. I love Robert Duvall. It's funny to actually see him in some comedies like Four Christmases. It's pretty funny to see this guy who was in gangster films and some of these comedies like Robert De Niro in Meet the Fockers and Bad Grandpa. I think that's with Zac Efron. So it's very funny to see some of these guys who were such tough guys to be in these lighthearted, funny movies like Joe Pesci and Home Alone. It's so weird to see him in that. Anyway, getting back to The Godfather. So when Robert Duvall decided he wasn't going to take the $1 million deal because that was actually kind of messed up, they should have gave him at least, $3 or $4 million, just a little bit less than Al Pacino because he was going to be the second main star. They actually wrote him out. So I don't think we even find out what happened to him. I don't remember. I try not to watch the movie too much because I just don't care about it. I can't remember if they killed him off or what they did. It's been a while. The third film too, when you watch it, if you're an avid fan of the first two and you watch the third, you realize this was absolutely forced. And it was because Francis Ford Coppola actually needed the money at the time. And I think they said that Paramount needed the money as well. So it was very forced, and it was the first and last Godfather movie to be made in, like I said, almost 20 years. We didn't get this. So when we got it, what's crazy is that when they decided that they were going to do the film, they were like, all right, cool. Thanks for signing on to the film. Now you only have a year to do it. So they gave Francis Ford Coppola a year to write the film it, and then edit it, which is not a lot of time considering, if they did the first one in 60 days, so that's nothing, that's 303 days extra you have to edit it. And, but it took him almost a month to write it. So, that brings him down to 3 edits. So that gives him 9 months to edit it, which isn't too awful bad. But for back then, it actually was a lot, not as much time. But now that's nothing. So and then you had Godfather 2 that was done in 104 days, but that was because they had been delayed a month because of Al Pacino's pneumonia. Mary Corleone cannot speak tonight. It's probably because I've been talking for 2 hours. Mary Corleone was actually played by Francis Ford Coppola's daughter, Sophia. And she was actually in the first one. So we see the baby getting christened, and that's actually Sofia Coppola. She was like 3 weeks old at the time. I forget. They said there was so she was actually born during production, and then 3 weeks later they were like, you know what? Let's put her in the movie. Like, why not? So when she was actually filming too, she said that the press was really on her because she only got the role because her dad was Francis Coppola, and she's probably not even going to be that good of an actress, and this is just ridiculous. They should have got an actual actress instead of just name dropping and using her. And she said that distracted her from a lot of her her acting, which maybe that's why it's so bad. I don't even think she's acted actually after that. I think she's mostly directed. She followed in her father's footsteps. But that's good because her acting really was not that good. Al Pacino and Diane Keaton, I didn't know this either, that they actually dated off screen after the first Godfather, and they were kind of off and on. And Diane Keaton said that she wanted a long-term relationship, but Al Pacino didn't. So that really brought their relationship down, and so that's what kind of, and that really created a lot of tension and friction between the two. So when you see him after Godfather Part 2, and then you see him in Godfather Part 3, it's insane that their characters and their real lives actually basically went off of that they strained their relationship for so long. So when they came on to set for Godfather Part 3, it was really tense and awkward. But just like their characters in Godfather Part 3, they actually put the past behind them and worked out their issues. And I read that during production, Al Pacino's grandmother had actually passed away, and she actually flew to New York with him to attend the funeral with him. Another one was they wanted Diane Keaton as Kay because they said that she was such a dramatic actress, and that's why she was perfect for it. Because when you also watch it too in Godfather Part 2, the scene in, I think it's like the middle of the movie. It's Michael and Kay, and they're having an argument, and Kay brings up, it wasn't a miscarriage, I had an abortion. And he gets mad. And so originally they were actually going to keep it as a miscarriage, but what they did was Talia Shire and Diane Keaton actually decided, no, we should say it's an abortion because that's just going to piss Michael Corleone off more. So let's do that. So they actually stuck with it. They're like, all right, yeah, let's go ahead and just you do you. Go ahead and do that. So it actually worked really well because that's actually one of the most powerful scenes in the film. And that's honestly one of my favorite one of my favorite scenes to quote because Al Pacino is shouting, I don't want to hear it. And that's actually one of my all-time favorites. I actually use that in everyday life when I'm getting annoyed with people. Anyway, back to the movie. This film was actually one of the only ones, it was the only one in the trilogy that didn't win the Academy Award for Best Picture, nor was it selected for preservation by the National Film Registry, which is kind of hard to imagine why, because it was a terrible movie and it was forced. So what I also thought was, what's crazy too is they said that Julia Roberts was offered the role to play Mary Corleone, and she turned it down to star in Pretty Woman, which I can kind of see that now because if I look at the film, I could see it. But I think because Al Pacino he has that dark skin that a Sicilian actually has because he is Sicilian. I feel like, as much as I don't want to say it, Sofia Coppola actually fit really well with that because she actually had the same exact skin tone that Al Pacino had. And the kid who played Anthony had about the same with that Diane Keaton had. So it's that mix, they actually did really well because genetically that would be correct, They also said that in every single Godfather movie that a Corleone brother has died. So in the first one, it was Sonny. In the second one, it was Fredo. And in the last one, it was Michael. And I'm going to ruin the third one for you because I really don't want you to waste your time on this movie. Like, if you actually want to sit there and watch this terrible movie, then you guys go ahead and do that. We probably got nothing going on in our lives. We probably could be doing homework. I could probably be doing homework right now, but I'm on the air. I actually am doing homework. So I retract my statement. But the third one at the end, what happens is it fast forwards. It's like 7 years, and Michael Corleone is sitting in his yard, and he falls over and he dies. What they had said too, so Mary Corleone dies in the film. She gets shot. It was an attempted assassination on Michael, but she was in the way, and so she got shot. So when she falls down, in the scene, Michael is screaming, he's yelling, and they actually almost completely cut that out because it was such an agonizing sound. And I haven't seen the movie in a while. I think they actually had it muffled. You couldn't even hear it. They completely muted it, and it wasn't until it was like a few seconds that you actually get to hear of it. So maybe that's why they did it, because it was agonizing. But I mean, I don't know if they mean like agonizing, like it breaks your heart agonizing, or if it was just a terrible sound. If it was a heartbreak agonizing, no, it couldn't have been, because if it was a heartbreak agonizing, they would have left it in there. So it must have been like, this is just a terrible sound, because if it was a heartbreaking agonizing sound, it would have gone very well with the scene of his daughter getting, shot and killed right in front of him. They were actually going to do, Francis Ford Coppola and Andy Garcia had actually talked about doing a Godfather Part 4. Thank God they haven't done it yet, because the third one was already bad enough. I can't imagine how bad this one was going to be. This one would probably be extremely forced, because what they were going to do is they were going to have Vincent, Andy Garcia's character from the third one, basically take over the Corleone family. And I don't even know what they would do, honestly. Like, what would they even do? Nothing. There's nothing for them to do. They've already done enough. The third one was just like, I could have gone the rest of my life without watching the third one. So, I highly suggest you guys actually watch The Godfather if you haven't seen it. There's actually, surprisingly, a pretty big amount of people that haven't seen it, but I can understand because it's such a long movie. I mean, the first one is 1 hour and 50 minutes. It's almost 3 hours long. And then the second one is 3 hours and 20 minutes. So I can understand why it's so long. Like when I worked at a dealership, and I worked at one of their other ones that didn't really have a whole lot of business. And I remember I sat there from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock. I was able to watch all 3 Godfathers uninterrupted. Didn't do anything. I sat there and watched the entire trilogy. Didn't have to answer the phone. Didn't have to pause or anything like that. Just sat there and watched it. So, I mean, if you have somewhere like a job that'll allow you to do that, then go ahead and do that. If they don't allow you to do that, if you want to get fired, do that then. But I mean, if you have some free time, this is definitely not a movie that you want to sit there and have on as background noise when you're doing homework, because this is something that you really have to pay attention to, because once you get to the second part, you're going to be really completely lost. They are on Netflix. So if you want to waste your time and watch the third one, go ahead and watch the third one. I really don't even care. I would highly suggest the second one, but definitely I really wish they sold it on DVD or like a digital download where it's just in chronological order, because that one would sell out a lot more, because it's more pieced together and it's easier to watch, with, I don't know. I mean, I don't even think it has the third one. I know AMC will play it and it goes on all day. So I'll have to look out for that. I'm actually surprised that I stayed broadcasting, because I was on for a couple of minutes earlier. I decided to go live earlier, and it didn't work out very well for me because it just completely cut me off. It didn't want to have me rambling, which is actually good, because I ran out of things to talk about. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about movies for the next 6 weeks, because it took forever for us to get a computer. Thanks to Professor McDermott for actually getting it set up. I really appreciate it. So next week, I'm actually going to talk about the 1975 Steven Spielberg classic Jaws. What I'm going to do is, that one is honestly one of my all-time favorite films. And to be honest, for it to be made at the time it was in 1975, the technology and graphics is amazing, and it still holds its value today. Like, I remember my brother's sister said that it was a pretty good movie for the 90s. And it's like, no, Talia, 1975. Bless your heart. Anyway, after that, I'm going to talk about the new Queen movie that comes out on the 2nd. I'm a little iffy on that one. I'm actually kind of excited to talk. I'm excited and scared to talk about that one. But that one I definitely probably won't need any paper for, like I did for The Godfather. After that, I'm kind of in between if I want to talk about Mel Brooks or Quentin Tarantino. Mel Brooks is a pioneer, and so is Quentin Tarantino. But Quentin Tarantino's got some roller coaster of some movies, like From Dusk Till Dawn. But that's what makes Quentin Tarantino incredible, is that he would actually do his movies out of order, like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. So I will be talking about Back to the Future as well, because that's a great trilogy. Very similar to The Godfather, in that part 2 is a lot better. And then obviously when it comes down to Christmas time, probably the week before finals, I will do a segment on the best Christmas movies to watch, because I'm not going to do it after Thanksgiving. I'm not going to do it the first week of Christmas. I might be. I can't remember. I have a list. I'll be talking about Christmas movies in December, because I'm going to let Halloween and Thanksgiving have their time. And I was going to talk about the Halloween movie, but I have nobody out here to watch the movie with, and I've never had time to go watch the movie. So, and I'm a bit of a pansy, and I don't want to sit in a movie theater by myself in the dark and watch this movie, because I can't even sit by myself and watch a horror movie with the lights on in broad daylight by myself. So I will probably not be talking about that movie. I heard it's pretty great. So if anybody wants to be my friend and go see the movie with me, I'd appreciate that. We just got to find a time to do it, because I'm completely booked up and it's ridiculous. Anyway, I'm trying to remember a lot of the things with The Godfather. I think I told you guys. I don't even think did I go over it? I don't know. I've been going on for like 40 minutes. No, it's been longer. I don't remember if I told you guys that the leave the gun, take the cannoli line was actually improvised. They also said that the most popular line, it's actually number 2 on the most quoted lines, is I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. That has been used so many times. I can't even count. It's just ridiculous. The movie had a lot of, the series has had a lot of improvised lines and actions, which is incredible, because it really shows, that's what I like too, is when there's scenes and actions that have been improvised, because that's my favorite, because you get that real genuine reaction out of the actor that you've done this to. Like, you smack him. I would probably legit cry if someone smacked me. I wasn't expecting it. And especially, yeah, um, and it's tough too, because with some of the things that they say and do, you have to keep a straight face, and it's hard to do that with a lot of these guys. Like, they were actually having prank wars during The Godfather Part 1. It was James Caan, I think Robert Duvall, and Marlon Brando, and they were consistently mooning people. And actually, Marlon Brando won. I'll get to that. What James Caan and Robert Duvall did is, there was a scene of Don Corleone. He was in the car, and what they did was they drove past him, and James Caan pulled his pants down and mooned Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando like falls over in his car dying of laughter, not like actually dying. Another one was during the wedding. It was Robert Duvall and I believe Marlon Brando. And what they did was they planned it so that they would end up mooning the whole wedding scene. So everybody who was at the wedding in the very beginning of the film was about to get mooned. And James Caan actually overheard the conversation that they were about to have. And before he could even say something, he looks over and they're already starting to do it. And he's like shouting, no, not here, not here, not here. And the cast and crew just start bursting out laughing. And that actually is what won Marlon Brando in the Best Mooning Contest. And they said that Al Pacino actually participated in it too, because he was sitting at the desk and they were trying to figure out what level the collar should be at for his shirt. So while they were doing it, for some reason, everybody was focused on the shirt and not at Al Pacino pulling his pants down in the studio. They didn't see that like whatsoever. So he pulls his pants down and they get, resituated and they get the shirt done and everything. And they start filming and he stands up and they were just like, Al, what are you doing, man? So I can't curse on here. So I'm trying to hold back. I'm trying to be like a good little Christian and not curse. They said that, I honestly don't even remember what I've talked about. I have the list, but I also went off of a lot of the stuff that I found was, so the facts and trivia that I got, majority of it was from IMDb. They have a lot more on there. It's just some of the stuff that I found was more important because it actually is very notable in a lot of the scenes of The Godfather. So if you want to see more that were actually not so notable, it's all in there. You can just go on IMDb. They have it on all three of them. They have trivia on like every single movie. But another part that I got was about the beginning of it when they were first starting to do it. The only reason why I knew that he actually took, 3-4 weeks to write the script was because my parents got me for Christmas this book. It was the 45th anniversary of The Godfather. And Marlon and Francis Ford Coppola would carry around this notebook and a typewriter with him. I can't remember if I'm repeating myself. I'm really sorry if I am. Just bear with me. I do this on like a daily basis. I am a constant repeater. What they did was that's how I found out about it, was that he wrote about the introduction, about how he got involved with The Godfather. And then the rest of the book is the script and copies of his notebook that you even see like the character list. He did that. He took the characters and he all wrote them in a notebook and he wrote down what their names were and what their descriptions were. So it's like he had these people in mind before he even wrote the characters, which he kind of did. But it's crazy because you can, you look in there and it's copied so well that it actually, I legit thought that someone colored in my Godfather notebook and I was ready to have a meltdown. But I realized, no, it's actually part of the printing. Is he took a lot of characters and he scribbled them out. I can't even read what they say. He scribbled them out so well. But it has in there all, it even has pages of the book that he actually had. He underlined and he made notes on it. So it's actually got his copy of the book. He scanned it where it has all his underlines. And then on the sides of that, it has his notes on how he transcribed it into the film. And it's got like pages from his notebook in there. It's a really good book. Honestly, if you can ever find it, I think it's like $45. I could be wrong on that. Honestly, it might be a little more. It's a really good book. Honestly, it's got a lot of pictures in there too, of the set behind the scenes, which that's good for people like me who like pictures. It's not just a boring book of just notebooks and that, they have actual pictures. So if you want to buy it, if you're an avid Godfather fan, I would highly recommend getting it. If not, if you just want to look at it, you could probably get it from like a library or rent it somewhere. You might even be able to find it on Amazon for a little cheaper, especially with the holidays coming up, you might be able to find it on sale. But I would definitely look at getting into that book because it's actually really, really cool how they did it. It's very similar, so Martin Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino, they have 2 books. I have one of them is on Goodfellas, and I have the other one that's on Reservoir Dogs. That was given to me by my cousin Daphne for my high school graduation, and they both tell you like their screenwriting, their styles, and so that kind of has Francis Ford Coppola's in there, and it has his style of how he writes down every single character that he's going to have in the film, and he imagines how they would look, and he writes it down, which is incredible to do because honestly that helps out a lot more with casting. You're not just, oh yeah, this guy might be it. He could look it. When they did Michael, he said that he was, like 25, 26, young, handsome, not tall, medium build, and that's what Al Pacino was. So it was really incredible to see him actually bring that to life, for him to read the book and use the imagination that everybody does. He brought his own imagination to life with how the character should look. So that's the incredible thing about Francis Ford Coppola. He is an amazing director and screenwriter. So I am very glad that he and Mario Puzo and Paramount Pictures decided that it was time to bring the gangster genre back, because that is a very loved genre, and that's actually one of my all-time favorites. I could watch gangster movies all day. So if we didn't have, The Godfather, we wouldn't have Goodfellas. We wouldn't have Casino. We wouldn't have Boardwalk Empire. We wouldn't have The Sopranos, the best TV show to ever be made. We wouldn't have that show, all because of The Godfather. And because Francis Ford Coppola saw that little tiny ad about the book being made into a movie, we would not have any, they had said they were going to have a bunch of different directors try to do it, but Marlon Brando, they were actually going to have Elia Kazan do the film, and Marlon Brando told Paramount, he goes, if you get Elia Kazan to direct this film, I will quit, because I cannot work with him. Earlier in the 1950s, Elia Kazan was actually blacklisted. One of his most notable films is East of Eden with James Dean. And it had another, what's his name? He did Christmas songs. I forget what his name is. Anyway, that's not important right now. But they were going to have somebody else direct it. And I think if they didn't have Francis Ford Coppola direct this, it wouldn't be the success that it actually is. I mean, it's like if Stanley Kubrick didn't do The Shining. It's like if they had Tim Burton do How the Grinch Stole Christmas. It's not the same. It probably wouldn't have been good, but not as good as they made it. So Francis Ford Coppola was actually at risk of getting fired multiple times, and he was pretty sure of it. So another one was Orson Welles actually auditioned for the role for Don Corleone, which I could see that, because if you've ever watched Citizen Kane, you can see him when they put the makeup on him. He would actually be a pretty good fit for it. But he probably wouldn't have gotten the voice nor the mannerisms that Marlon Brando gave Don Vito Corleone, which is what made it incredible, because Don Corleone made it his own character. He made it with the voice and the actions and everything. He did an amazing job. And with Frank Sinatra, I think I talked about that. Frank Sinatra was very upset with Johnny Fontane supposedly being mimicked after him, even though it wasn't. So Frank Sinatra got a little conceited there, thinking it was him. And it wasn't until the third part of The Godfather that Frank Sinatra was like, all right, these movies actually aren't so bad. I was kind of over exaggerating here. So I have 4 minutes. I'm really surprised, because earlier when I did this and I thought I was live, I ran out in like 20 minutes. So I already talked about what I was going to do next week. I would love to sit here all night and just talk about movies. But I can't, because I have to get up early in the morning. and it's 10 o'clock at night. So, yeah, I would definitely... They usually sell 2 at Target if The Godfather ever goes off of Netflix. You can get it at Target, the trilogy, for I think like $20. If that. It might even be cheaper now. Yeah, I really wish they would sell it, though, in a chronological order, because I would buy that, and I would watch that a lot. They have a bunch of different ones, too. So if you, like, don't get your fill on gangster movies from the Godfather trilogy, they have Casino and Goodfellas on Netflix still, I believe. If not, I think Hulu just added some. Amazon Prime, I think... Amazon Prime. So if you've actually never seen The Sopranos, too, that's actually another good show you guys should watch. If you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it on there. Or if you steal HBO Go, like I do from my parents, you can watch it on there as well. Boardwalk Empire is another great one that takes place during the Prohibition. So that one's actually a really good one to watch because it's actually written by the same people who wrote The Sopranos. So I would watch The Sopranos, which is technically 7 seasons. And there's like 13 episodes per season, and they're all like an hour long. So, I mean, I watched that. That kept me busy for probably about like 2 or 3 months, I think. Might have been less. I think it was actually like 2. And Boardwalk has 4 seasons, and they're about the same amount. But those are really good gangster shows. They have some documentaries, but I mean, the documentaries don't do it like the films and the TV shows do. There's only a few TV shows, and they haven't been as successful because they don't have that same magic that The Sopranos and Boardwalk Empire had. Movies, there's a ton of them. I would definitely start out, before you do Godfather, I would definitely try and watch some of the older ones like Public Enemy and White Forest. There's a lot of them on there that have, James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart. Those are really big gangsters, even though James Cagney actually didn't even want to be a gangster, which there was another actor that was like that too. Forget who it was. I forget a lot, honestly. Yeah, I would definitely start out. If you don't want to watch those, then that's fine. Just jump right over to Godfather, because it wasn't until then that they actually set a bar. The Godfather, Goodfellas, and Casino actually set a really high bar for a lot of these mafia movies, and a lot of them try to be like The Godfather and like Goodfellas, and they just can't do it because they don't have that same amount of magic, and they try too hard. I can't think of any because I would try to forget the title as soon as I saw it. Yeah. It's been fun. So I'm glad I got to spend 2 hours in here. 1 hour rambling about nothing, and the other actually rambling about something and being consistent and not running out of things and being dead silent like I wasn't last time. So thanks for listening, guys. I will see you next week when we talk about Jaws. Hopefully I'll have a lot more I should have a lot more content. There's a lot of good content about that movie. So I will see you guys I will see you guys next week. Yeah, have a good night. Happy Halloween, because I won't see you till the day after. Yeah. Peace out, my dudes. All right, so let's go ahead and